Sorry, John. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'd like to thank obviously this committee. It's very novel, and I think it's a very welcome process where petitioners can petition on areas of concern to ordinary citizens. And I'd like to thank the deputies for taking their time to come in and out of here, the very busy schedule, for listening to our stories. I just want to refer back to Deputy Mulhern's the comment in relation to special damages and that sort of stuff. And if we could just indulge for about 2 minutes, and I won't take much more than 2 minutes, but I think we've had a very good ramble through the problems, and I hope the department officials here would bring back to the relevant ministers the very serious problems that are being caused to ordinary citizens as workers in pursuing their rights, and particularly where those rights have been adjudicated to be abused. There's a man sitting in the public audience here, is a member of Mandate Trade Union. Lucky enough, he's a member of ours, and we have the resources to prosecute his claim as far as necessary. John Mulpeter. John is 38. John went to work in Connolly Shoes nearly 38 years ago. He's not unusual in that there was 3 other members of that staff with 38 years service. John's employer sacked them all 4 of them, on the one day back in 2010, without any recourse whatsoever, without any reason whatsoever. Eventually in 2011, John ended up before the Employment Appeals Tribunal. John has an excellent employee record, never been on strike, never had any disciplinary decisions against him, but found himself unemployed. He eventually ended up represented by Mandate Trade Union, the Employment Appeals Tribunal, and we represented all the members of the Employment Appeals Tribunal. John was awarded €1,600. His colleague with exactly the same amount of service was awarded €53,295 for unfair dismissals. Now you might ask, both of them were sacked, same service, why? The reason was, this is the question of special kind of damages, John suffered a heart attack due to the stress of being sacked and being on the picket line. John wasn't therefore adjudicated by the tribunal to be available for work, so therefore he suffered no loss. So not only are you penalised by losing your job, but because that man suffered a heart attack due to the stress of losing his job, his award was also more or less wiped out. John is still picking that store 1 day a week. We still can't get not only his 1,600, we can't get the 53,000 for the other members of staff, Pat Byrne, Damien Keegan and Susan Tighe. We can't get over the 100,000 which is due. But as that employer, John, as far as John and his fellow members were concerned, they worked for Connolly Shoes. When we lifted the veil of corporate secrecy behind those companies, we discovered there was 5 companies. John and his colleagues actually worked for a company with no assets, which still returns annual returns every year to the company registration office with 0,000 on them, trading with the same directors. So it's not insolvent. It hasn't been placed into insolvency. So therefore John has no access to his rights. We've got an enforcement order on behalf of John and his colleagues. We've had the sheriff down to the shop. The employer picks out a receipt and says, listen, sorry, the stock on the shelves is owned by this company, the premises is owned by this company, and the order that you have is against a company which has no assets. And the only thing that John has left, or we have left to do on John's behalf, is to wind that company up, to go to the High Court at great expense, and we'll do it, to wind that company up, to give John and his colleagues access to the insolvency fund. But why should bad behaviour be rewarded from that employer? Why should the state not put a charge on that company and those directors? Why shouldn't those directors be banned from ever being a director in any company ever again? There's associated companies all over the place linked to that company where assets have been moved. Now, this is about the little person. This is about the worker. And workers should have access to address their concerns and to right wrongs. And if we're going to have a situation where workers who are not members of unions, or haven't got the means, the vast majority haven't got the means to employ barristers and solicitors, head off to the High Court and Circuit Court for enforcement orders, well, I mean, it's a sad day. And I'd ask the officials down here today, in the review of any legislation, this is not frivolous. John Mulpeter is not frivolous. John Mulpeter has put his health and his own well-being and his family have been on the line for the last 3 years trying to prosecute his rights. He's been run into a cul-de-sac by the legislation, and that legislation should be opened up that he can get what he's entitled to. No other worker, either in this building here or any place else, should have to suffer what he had to suffer. So I'd ask that the message comes from this committee and the department officials back to the relevant ministers is very, very strong, that it's opened up and that this type of corporate veil protection of directors at all costs with limited liability companies removed immediately.
Thanks, John.